Throwing Barbarians are one of the most iconic builds for the enraged battle bros across all three of the Baldur's Gate games. In this video today, I want to go over my Spartan Throwing Barbarian build, leveraging the extreme might of the Thrown special attribute and discussing how throwing weapons work so you can get the most out of hurling a piece of furniture or bladed object at your foes. At first, this can really seem like a not so fun way to play the class, but I promise across the ridiculous shenanigans one can pull from throwing smaller creatures at other targets or the absurd damage of throwing weapons in general, you'll see that this is indeed very fun. And this build can work with Karlach, the Dwarf Hireling, or even your main character, whatever you'd like. If this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things is by upfronting the knowledge of my videos so you can decide if it's the right one for you. So with that being said, we'll be taking 9 levels into Barbarian with the subclass Berserker, then grabbing 3 levels into Rogue and taking Thief for the extra bonus action. Basically, we use Berserker's special Enraged throw, which will enable us to use a throwing weapon 4 times in one round, destroying most of the competition. We'll optimize this by using the Tavern Brawler feat to maximize our strength modifier bonuses. And that's really the entire gist of the video. I'm going to go over how throwing weapon damage actually works, so I can show you a nifty trick with Eldritch Knight, but that's really the TLDW of this build. If that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to shut the video down and get back to enjoying launching mud methods across the map. Before you head out, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Each one of those things does help me out in a huge way. I currently have something like 89% unsubscribed viewership on the channel, and that's a metric I'm trying to change this year, so every little bit helps. You can jump ahead to any part of the video that interests you the most using the chapters with the timeline in the description, and if you need help with any other subject in Baldur's Gate 3, check out my playlist linked below at the end of the video, upper right corner. It's all over the place, I promise. Well, let's get started here on the ultimate Spartan Throwing Barbarian build for Baldur's Gate 3. So to start us off, we're actually going to take a look at the BG3 wiki that has a really great article on throw. And if you hover over throw in the game, you'll get this information, right? Your strength affects how much weight you can throw. Heavier items deal more damage. That last part is pretty key, so keep that in mind, because throwing damage is pretty straightforward. You think you throw something, it does damage, right? But that heavier item thing is where we're really going to be kind of hinging upon when we use the Eldritch Knight to bond a weapon, or bind a weapon, so that we can throw whatever weapon we want in the game. But that doesn't necessarily mean that throwing any weapon means it's going to do a lot of damage. It's based off of a lot of things. So the damage comes from the object itself, and it does bludgeoning damage. So the real thing to know, though, is this bit right here. For weapons with the thrown property, the damage roll and damage type is the same as the weapon's melee damage. So if you were to say throw a dagger or any of the 3 dedicated like special throwing weapons in the game, the Dwarven Thrower, the Returning Pike, or the Nimanathara, whatever its legendary weapon, you'll see it later in the video, it will use its actual profile to do the damage. If you were to throw a 2-handed sword that you've used bind weapon or packed bind from a warlock on, then it will use the weight of the weapon to do the damage. And that is what's absolutely crucial. So you always want to look at the weight of the weapon that you're throwing if it does not have this thrown property. For objects and creatures, damage is determined by the target's weight of the object being thrown. So light objects under 20 pounds, 1 bludgeoning. Medium objects that are 20 to 100, it's 1d4, and objects that are pretty much over 100 pounds, it's 2d4 bludgeoning damage. And and this is another big crucial portion here too, if the thrown object or creature is heavier than half the target's weight, the target will be knocked down. Knocked back. That's crucial because the next part, if the thrown object or creature is heavier than the target's weight, the target will become prone without a saving throw. So the fact that you can just automatically get a prone off of throwing things is very huge, because then your follow-up throws will all have advantage. The rest of your team will have advantage until that character or creature stands back up. So this is what makes throw so powerful and important, is that it automatically can apply some sort of status effect or move things, right? So, I mean, worst comes to worst, you're probably going to move them back unless it's a very large creature, then you're just going to be doing that damage. And the last little bit of information I wanted you to know, a lot of this stuff too is that that's just prone, but a creature may throw items and other creatures weighing up to 0.2 times strength kg. For example, a fighter with a strength score of 18 can throw objects up to a weight of 130 pounds or 64 kilos. So just kind of know that if you really wanted to, but this gives you an idea of what your kind of cap is for what you can throw. And also a creature can only throw creatures of a smaller size. So if you're a gnome, you're not going to, even if you had 23 strength, you can't throw like a half orc, for example. But if you're a half orc, you can punt those gnomes across the whole entire game board. Also, too, it's notable that it does trigger extra attack, which we'll talk about when we go into the whole build and everything. But I want you to know how throw damage works, because you might be saying to yourself, why aren't you binding this weapon and throwing that thing? It seems like it's going to do a lot of damage. In fact, it won't, because the weapon is just so light. So now you know the kind of nuance of all this. Let's get into the build. Starting us off in character creation, we can go through which race to select. Now, I'm going to go through some of the things that are probably a little bit more min-maxy in this build, because this build is very much a crunchy numbers type build. But when it comes to race, please choose whatever you want, even if it's not dwarf. And I'll just say outright, dwarf is the best one for this build, because there is a weapon called the Dwarven Thrower that is really good. It does flat extra damage if you are a dwarf throwing it. And if you're attacking something that is large or bigger, it does even more damage. So that's just an upfront thing right there. The dwarf is the best throwing barbarian because they get access to the best throwing weapon in the game. But every other class or race is still very viable. If you want to stick with this kind of really cool Spartan theme that I've kind of ideated for this build, you can go with the half orc. They won't benefit from savage attacks, because this is when you land a critical hit with a melee weapon attack. Melee weapon attack being the critical portion of this, you deal extra dice. You don't get that, but you do get relentless endurance. So if you get downed, you get back up with 1 hit point. So this is kind of a cool bit of this, what am I trying to say, this theme we have. The halfling and the gnome I wouldn't recommend, just because you're not going to get the benefit of being able to throw things. Throw creatures that are for the most part a little bit smaller than you, because not many things are smaller than you. So even though the halfling gets really cool stuff like Lucky, I just don't really find it as viable as choosing a dwarf, which gets access to the best weapon. But I like stuff like the half orc, because again, it's got those great capabilities. It can throw most everything. Tieflings are also a really strong choice too. I wouldn't go with the Zariel Tiefling, because the 2 special spells you get from them won't be applicable to this build. But the Mephistopheles and Asmodeus Tieflings are pretty cool, because they get access to very fun, I'm going to say cantrips, but it's just a bound spell that they get access to. Mephistopheles get access to darkness and fun stuff like that. Drow's also pretty cool for access to darkness as well. So you can take advantage of all those things. So let's go ahead and just kind of step ourselves a little bit forward. Oh, also the sub race, I would go with Gold Dwarf just to get access to more hit points. The Shield Dwarf here, and the actually, you know what? I totally forgot about the Dwagar. What a great video this is so far. The Dwagar is also a very good one, because they get access to Enlarge and Shrink, which can be beneficial for you, and you also get access to Invisibility, which is nice just to kind of give you some mobility in the sense that you can move around without being deterred. They also start with a advantage on saving throws against illusions, being charmed, or paralyzed, and they natively get that resistance to poison because they are dwarfs. Dwarfs with an FS is Warhammer, so sorry. So that is probably my hard pick, is either Gold Dwarf or Dwagar, either more health or access to stuff in like Enlarge and Shrink. Class is obviously going to be Barbarian. Keep in mind here we have Rage, which is going to allow us to do extra damage with throwing weapons, 2 extra damage with throwing weapons, and of course, just keep in mind too, you get gain resistance to physical damage and advantage on strength checks and saves. But if you do not do damage, you lose being enraged. Keep that in mind. Also, with Constitution, it is added to your armor class. So a higher Constitution gives you further AC, which is always good. And keep in mind too, unarmored defense for Barbarian is different than the one for Monk, because Monk will tell you that you, while not wearing armor, you'll add your Wisdom modifier to your armor class. So you cannot have any form of armor on, period. The Barbarian can still use shields. So that is worth noting here. Now, for your background, please go with the background that makes sense for you and the roleplay you've created for your character. I always recommend really leaning on this, because it's going to really dictate how you go about the game and how you get a lot of enjoyment, right? Are you some sort of berserk soldier that is now some mercenary or soldier for hire, right? Are you a folk hero stalking through the mountains enraged without a shirt and a shiny nipple to show everyone that you mean business? If you want like a min-max pick, my go-to is Guild Artisan, but I always say, like I just said, go with something that's going to make sense for the character you want to build in this game. Guild Artisan, though, gives us access to both Insight and Persuasion. So if this is my main character, what I like about that is it automatically turns those proficiencies on, so I get those bonuses throughout the entire game, and I don't have to worry about me being a barbarian not having access to Persuasion as far as my skills go. Which brings us to that subject. You don't have many skills to access as a barbarian. You have a high health pool, you do a lot of damage, but you're not, a cunning linguist. So keep those things in mind. Persuasion here, this being the character that would be my main character, is pretty nice just to kind of have that already in. You're not going to get anything else. You can go Intimidation here, which is good. This should say +2 because we have Persuasion inherited from background. It's just kind of a weird bug that exists on the screen, but Insight should say +3 and Persuasion should say +2 in this instance. But I would go with something like Intimidation so that I do have another skill to fall back on, and there are a ton of really cool, flavorful barbarian dialogue options that are just really cool. Athletics is another good one too for shoving things to get some distance before you actually throw. This is cool too because you'll have plenty of bonus actions to do that with. Nature can be nice here. I would steer clear from animal handling. I would just simply use a potion of Speak with Animals. Basically, if you have Speak with Animals up, you will not use animal handling. If you do not, animal handling is basically a conversational skill in the same way that Persuasion is, that allows you to talk to animals. Perception is also quite good if you want to go with that instead of athletics. This is going to be good just to spot things in the wild. Now, let's talk about our ability scores. So ability scores are going to be a little tricky here. It's going to depend upon A, is this character your main character, or are we building out Karlach? If we're building out Karlach, you can swap out the charisma here and put it into wisdom, because I like not having any penalties on my wisdom checks. This is going to include stuff like charm person, anything like I think hold person is also the wisdom checks. Pretty much a lot of the CCs or crowd controls in the game are done as wisdom checks. So I want to make sure I don't have that innate penalty that an 8 would give us. So with this stat setup, we're going to use Tavern Brawler when we select it at level 4 to put us at 18 strength. We've got 14 dexterity and we've got 16 constitution. These two numbers are going to add into our armor class to give us 5 more AC, which is really lovely. Now, I said there's 2 ways to do this. You can go about a bit more of a gamey setup, and what a lot of people will tell you is just to bring your strength down to like 10. You could even go down all the way down to 8 if you wanted to, and use elixirs of Hill Giant Strength. You'd buy them from Auntie Ethel in the Emerald Cove or later in the game, or you'd make them eventually and use, like, say, a transmutation wizard at your camp. There's a lot of processes. If you don't want to do that, if you're like, you know what, dude, I'm brand new to this game, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about, you're fine just doing this. Just ignore the people that talk on the internet about the min-max. You got to bring it down to 8 and just use the elixirs of Hill Giant Strength. I'm doing that in my honor playthrough. You don't need to do that. Just stick here, you'll be totally fine. If you do want to min-max this, though, bring that to like 10. You can bring up your dexterity here to 16, and we can put a little bit into wisdom and probably bring our charisma up for a conversation if this is our main character. That's what you can really do if you want to super game this up. But in fact, even you could probably actually do this. With what's it called? Tavern Brawler, it's going to give us a point in either strength or constitution. You would just simply put it in constitution rather than strength. But my personal choice for you, if you're brand new, just go with the 17 strength. It's the easiest way to kind of just jump into this build without worrying about too much here. So you can do something like this if it's your main character, this if it's Karlach. Progression for this build is super straightforward. We're taking 9 levels in Barbarian. There's no crazy things to do, and then we're going to do 3 levels into Rogue. Once we get to 9 Barbarian, I'll talk about some different multi-class options if you don't want to take the extra bonus actions. But level 2 brings us Danger Sense, advantage on dexterity saving throws against traps, spells, and surfaces, and then Reckless Attack, which is always quite fun. I'm going to bring that up here and brings us into level 3 where we get our subclass. You can go Wildheart. I think, honestly, it's the best Barbarian subclass, but since we're strictly looking at throwing, Berserker is the best way to go here because of Enraged Throw. Pick an item or creature and throw it at a target, dealing additional damage and knocking it prone. Your strength affects how much weight you can throw. Heavier items, we talked about that. But the damage of thrown weapons is the same as the weapons melee. You also deal additional damage based on your strength. All the stuff we know before. Now, there was a patch that was supposed to have fixed this to make it so that it only happens once a turn. As of the making of this video, patch 5 did not fix that, so you still can throw and rage throw as many times as you want, as long as you have the bonus actions. And of course, we get Frenzy, which is different than Rage. So you gain Frenzy Strike and Rage Throw. You can also make an improvised weapon attack. You gain resistance to physical damage and advantage on strength checks last 10 turns. So you've got that little bad boy there. And again, we're just going to kind of haul through this until we get to level 4, where we choose our feats. Now, there's only real 2 big feats that are very straightforward here, and it is your Tavern Brawler feat, which is when you make an unarmored attack, use an improvised weapon, or throw something, your strength modifier is added twice to the damage and attack rolls rather than just once. So basically it takes this number of 13, well, this now new number of 4, and doubles it, right? So it's going to be, rather than 4, 8 to everything. It is absolutely juicy. As far as some other options you can go with, the big one, of course, is going to be an ability improvement after that. We're just going to put 2 points into strength to give us 20 base strength. There are gloves in the game that will set your strength to 23, but we don't want to use them. We want to use the ones that increase our throwing damage. That's going to be pretty crucial for us. Outside of that, there's not really many different ways you can go with this. Great Weapon Master does not apply to your throwing weapon, even though we will be using technically a great weapon to throw. Also, Savage Attacker. As of, again, the making of this video, I went and tested this. This does not apply to your throwing weapon. It will show you, when you attack with your weapon, it will show you 2d6 rather than 1d6. Or like 2d8 rather than 1d8, for example, the weapon I've got on. It did for a melee attack, it did not for a ranged attack. So that is worth noting there. I guess some other ones though you can take are mobile to help out with increased mobility across the board. Alert is really good though, so you get a bonus to your initiative and you can't be surprised. You already won't be surprised because you're a barbarian, but the bonus to your initiative is quite cool. But those I'd say are really just kind of lackluster based off of just the fact that you want as much strength as possible, and this is how we're going to get it going between Tavern Brawler and ability improvement. On to level 5 though, we just pick up another point with Barbarian, giving us extra attack, which will apply to our throwing weapon, and fast movement, giving us an additional 10 feet of movement while not wearing heavy armor. You can wear other armor, but it's not heavy. We're going to go ahead and accept that. Push forward here into level 6, which is going to give us mindless rage. While frenzied, you can't be charmed or frightened, and calm emotions no longer ends your rage, which is really, really, really good. This helps you kind of dodge a lot of the issues you might have with your low wisdom score and a lot of those crowd control things. And you're going to start getting a lot more rage charges. Coming into level 7 though, we'll get Feral Instinct. You gain +3 bonus to initiative and can't be surprised. So it's basically like Alert, but rather than +5, you get +3. So that's why I said like Alert, you just kind of already built into the class, which is really cool. Further onward, we get access to another feat. And again, we're just going to go with ability improvement here to bring us up to 20 strength. This is a little bit more of a straightforward build. Usually I have more to say, but this was pretty cut and dry. Brutal Critical is really nice here though. So when you land a critical hit, you roll an extra damage die as well as as the normal additional critical dice. So it's a whole lot more damage when you throw and crit something. It's quite juicy. So let's go ahead here and accept. And let's start. Let's go through. All right quick. Let's start a conversation now about multiclass. So multiclassing for this build, we're going to focus on Rogue. We're going to get to Thief, and that's going to give us an additional bonus action. If you don't want to do that, or you've read that you're watching this after another patch went out and it indeed ended the bonus actions being used for Enraged Throw, you can definitely go with Fighter here. And with fighting style, I would go with Defense. No, actually I would not. I forgot because we're not wearing. You can go with Protection because we are going to use a shield as part of like the theme for this build. Everything else won't really affect you. This great weapon fighting, so when you roll a 1 or 2 on a damage die for an attack with a 2-handed melee weapon, that die is re-rolled once. So this will not apply because it has to be in melee combat again. Protection's the only one unless we go with defense. But again, you're not going to probably be using armor. So you would go Fighter here, and then you would choose either Champion to just get a raw increase to your crit damage because it makes it so that you crit rather than rolling a 20, you can roll a 19 to crit. That's Champion, cut and dry. You can go Battle Master for some added utility to the entire party by using all the battle maneuvers. If I didn't go Rogue, I would go Battle Master because I feel like that fits to like the whole Spartan theme I've created in my head for this character. And lastly, you can go with Eldritch Knight But Eldritch Knight, it's fun. It does add a little bit of spell casting, but it's only 3 spells. You can bind a weapon rather than doing it from the cool little exploit I'm about to show you, which could be patched soon. But still, I think that it's really between Battlemaster and Champion if you don't go with a Rogue Thief. In this case, though, we're going to go Rogue. Not to say like we're going to go like off somewhere. We're choosing Rogue. We get to choose some new abilities too, as well as some expertise. So choose these based off of, you know, what kind of character you're going with, right? Is this Karlach? Okay, cool. Well, then I probably don't need sleight of hand because I probably have a rogue. So then let me increase something like investigation. So those passive rolls that I'm going to make, like our perception or survival, something that I'm already going to kind of just deal with in the game world. Let me just have her kind of help me out with that. Is this my main character? Well, you know what? I had persuasion to start, but let me drop an expertise point into it so at least I get a +5. Or maybe we do the same thing for intimidation. You can kind of have some fun with this depending upon the character or what kind of holes are in your party. You can use these 3, well, 1 skill proficiency and 2 skill expertise to kind of patch those holes up, right? So let's do that, and this. And now she's way better at just kind of identifying things in the world as we walk around. We'll push into level 2, get our cool little bonus action stuff like cunning, hide, dash, and disengage. And then our last level here to get thief, which just outright grants us an additional bonus action. So let's now talk about that exploit I went over and then go into some gear discussion. So here's a little trick. Now, again, please keep in mind this could possibly be patched, but we go to Withers, we talk to him, and we go to, I would like to talk about hirelings. You don't even need to use a hireling for it, but it's just me liking to stick with the characters and how they are, and blah, 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 blah. So we're going to choose a hireling. You have 2 barbarians in here, a Dwagar and a gold dwarf, but it doesn't matter. For this exploit, choose whoever you want. It's not gonna matter at all. We'll venture forth. We will select this character. I suppose we could have started with a fighter to make this easier. I don't have to do this. But we want to change our class of this character to a fighter. Simple and easy. Doesn't matter about any stats, options, anything like that. We're going to level this character up to level 3. Except, doesn't matter. And then we choose Eldritch Knight. Doesn't matter what we choose for spells or anything. Just choose whatever. Because what we're going with is this little guy. Weapon Bond. Ritually bind the weapon in your main hand. The weapon can't be knocked out of your hand and it automatically returns to you when thrown. This does not make it a thrown weapon though. And we'll talk about that once we talk about gear. So we'll exit out of here. We don't need to level all the way up. Oh my god, 2 weapons on your back. You crazy lady. And we'll go ahead and pull this really cool sword, right? We'll put it on the character. And we'll press Weapon Bond. Click myself. And now the weapon says bound. So if I throw it, watch out, good lord, dog. Comes right back to me. And you're like, okay, well, cool. It's on her. It's not on the character I want it to be on. Well, let's go ahead and just swap this on to Karlach. Now let's use my main character. Talk to her. Where did she go?
This vessel is at thy disposal.
They wait for me in my camp. That's crucial. The other one dismisses her. She's no longer in the party. Karlach has that sword equipped. The sword still says bound weapon. And if we press throw, still comes right back to her. So this is how you can abuse or kind of exploit this, but just like I said many times before, keep in mind, this is not a thrown weapon, so it will use its weight. So you're gonna have to find a weapon that has a very, very high weight. There's one called like the Very Heavy Great Axe, and it has something like it's like a 50-pounder axe. It's super heavy. So that thing works. But unless a weapon doesn't have thrown, you gotta look at its weight, which is of course right here. So that's our item weight there. So just keep that in mind. It's a cool little workaround and thing you can do, but you're going to do it and go, why does this not do all this ton of damage? It'll have all the effects that it has. It does all the things that it does, but it won't do as much damage as just a pure thrown weapon. So let's go into equipment and talk about thrown weapons. Gear choices for this character are pretty straightforward, but there are a few weapons that or items even that I don't have. So I'm going to show those first. The first one that we're going to want to definitely get access to is the Ring of Flinging. You're going to get access to this in the Goblin Camp in Act 1. The wearer gains a 1d4 bonus to throw damage. Absolutely crucial for this build, and you get it very, very early on. In the same spot, you're also going to get access to the Returning Pike, which allows this weapon to return to its owner. And this is just going to be massive for you because you're going to get access to this. The build's going to come online right at that point. Just keep in mind though, with the returning pike, it's a little funky. So if you use this out of combat to start combat, it will sometimes not return to you. And in general, sometimes it won't return to you. So just in those instances, know that any character that's next to the pike can pick it up, and then you can equip it through the inventory back onto Karlach. So don't really feel, oh man, it's on the ground next to one of my other characters. Just have them pick it up. You will waste an action equipping it, but not picking it up. So just that is worth note. And the last thing here that I don't have, but just the best throwing weapon in the game, is the Dwarven Thrower here. This weapon will, again, return to its owner when thrown, and a dwarf throwing this warhammer deals an extra 1 to 8 bludgeoning damage on top of its existing profile. So that's why it's so good. Now, if the target is a large, huge, or gargantuan creature, the strike deals an additional 2 to 16. So basically, rather than a 1d8, it does like a... That's actually not true. It just does 2 to 16 more damage. I can't get fancy with that. So it has a lot of really good things going for it, and it is why dwarf is the best throwing barbarian. Now, as far as other gear goes, here we go. Now, I had originally envisioned this to be a Spartan-themed character, and it's really just not. It's not a good idea. And the reason behind that is stuff like the returning pike and this weapon, Nero Luna, which is the best weapon aside from the Dwarven Thrower. They are versatile weapons, meaning you can use them either one-handed or two-handed. And if you use it one-handed, you can see right here that it has either a 1d8, then parenthetical notation 1d6. So right now you can see that this is a 1d6, and that's a 1d6 for the thunder damage. So this is telling me the game is going to do this dice and this dice whenever I use it because I have a shield on. So we lose the shield because even though that fits the theme I want, it doesn't really fit the damage. Because now the game's telling me I'm going to use this 1d8. So it's going to just do more damage. So is it an astronomical amount of damage? No, it's not, right? You're looking at 10 to 20 or 10 to 22. So if you want to stick with the Spartan theme, just use a shield. You'll lose a little bit more damage here and there, but it's really probably a negligible amount. And the nice thing too is you'll still get the AC bonus from the shield regardless of your unarmored defense. It's always going to apply. So the cool thing is it just gives you 2 more AC for whatever shield you want to use. So really it's up to you. Do you want to use a shield and get 2 AC, or do you want to not use a shield and get 2 more damage? Really, again, it's up to you. And I had this helmet on because it's very, Corinthian style helmet, Spartan-esque. But outside of that, that's really kind of like, as long as you've got this weapon or the returning pike or the Dwarven Thrower, your build's online. But let's make this build even better. And the first thing that we do is look at our gloves. With the gloves of uninhibited Kushigo, the wearer deals an additional 1d4 with throw attacks and attacks made with improvised weapons. So now between this and the ring, we get an additional 1d4 each to our throwing. It's a massive increase to the damage because it's just a flat damage increase, right? So that's a nice bit of damage boost. And in addition to that, did I put it not in my inventory? No, it's over here. We would use the Caustic Ring. Your weapon attacks also deal 2 acid damage. So unless something's completely immune to acid damage, you just get 2 more flat damage added in. I really love all these items working in conjunction. The Ring of Flinging, the gloves here, and this. So all that stuff is all quote unquote best in slot. Outside of that, though, we can just have fun with the gear that's kind of presented to us. For helmets, we have a lot of different helmets you can jump into. Pretty much any of the Barbarian helmets are going to work here, right? The Fistbreaker helmet is going to give you a bonus to spell save DC, but really you want the game +1 bonus to initiative. That's going to be nice. You'll get that here in Act 2. Then at the very beginning of Act 3, get the Horns of the Berserker. The Bloodthirst ability is not going to apply to us because we're not doing unarmed or melee attacks, but you get a +2 bonus to attack rolls when attacking creatures that have already taken damage. So it makes you a little bit more accurate, right? We have the Mask of Soul Perception, gain +2 bonus to attack rolls, initiative rolls, and perception checks, which is always really great. It's just a flat bonus there for you. The Hell Dusk Mask, helmet, which is nice because it's not an actual piece of armor. And it will give us that no one can land a critical hit on me. The wielder has a +2 bonus to saving throws against spells, and I can see in magical and ordinary darkness up to 40 feet. So it just can't be blinded. So any magical darkness does no longer affects this character, which is really, really, really cool. Now in Act, in 1, the Myconid Colony, you can get Myconid Colony. You can get the Circlet of Hunting. You gain a +1d4 bonus to attack rolls against creatures marked by Hunter's Mark, which you can get from our Returning Pike, right? It gives us that Hunter's Mark. True Strike, Fairy Fire, or Guiding Bolt. And a lot of things can give you Fairy Fire or Guiding Bolt. I would never use True Strike because it costs an action and it's just kind of jankety. But you can use this setup for a long time in the game. As far as your cloaks go, I would go with the Cloak of Protection just for increased armor class and saving throw. But if you want to further just have some more reactive damage, the Flesh Melter Cloak is really good. Whenever a creature deals melee damage to the wearer, that creature takes 1 to 4 acid. Just kind of adds into that acid damage we're already doing. For a necklace, I've got this. You have advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. All 3 of the stats you've got the lowest of. So at least it gives you a leg up in those. But I would, if I didn't use this, you could use the Misty Step necklace, anything that gives you a little bit more mobility. And if you're looking at this build and you didn't get the Ring of Flinging, well, you can still use something like this, the Ring of Free Action. You ignore the effects of difficult terrain and cannot be paralyzed or restrained. Or this guy right here, Killer's Sweetheart. When you kill a creature, your next attack will be a critical hit. So basically you bake in auto crits into this build, so it's very, very fun. And you as a barbarian do more damage with your crit hit, so it's cool. So me, for example, I don't have the Ring of Flinging, so this one works pretty well for me. Crusher's Ring is always really nice in the very beginning. When you clear the Goblin Camp, you get Crusher's Ring. It gives you 10 more movement speed. Now, as far as your armor goes, or well, boots and armor. Boots, use any boots. There's 2 or 3 different barbarian boots. You can just use those. This makes the jump distance is increased by 5 feet, and brutal leap allows me to knock things down. You have a +1 bonus to armor class and saving throws as long as you are not wearing armor or holding a shield. Guess what? We're using a shield. So if I take the shield off, my AC goes up, then back down, because we get invasive intent, but we don't have a shield. So it kind of washes itself out depending upon what you're doing. So use that as you wish. In addition, though, you can use any of the movement boots that like give you click your heels or give you Misty Step, pretty much anything that helps with your mobility. And when it comes to armor, the best armor you can get is the Mighty Cloth until you get the Bone Spike Garb. But there's kind of a way to look at this. So, Mighty Cloth, you gain Bull's Strength and increase your strength score by 2 to a max of 20. You cannot be pushed against your will, and you have an advantage on the saving throws against being restrained. So, when you get access to this, it's right at the very beginning of Act 2. If you are not level 8, the Mighty Cloth is good because it will set your strength to 20, right? Because level 4, we picked up our Tavern Brawler, put us to 18 strength. This is going to give us 20 strength to a max of 20 strength. What I mean by that is, I'm going to put on these Gauntlets of Hill Giant Strength. It's going to set my strength to... Karlak. It's going to set my strength to 23. Now, if I put on the Mighty Cloth, it's not going to further increase my strength. If I take these off, it's not going to further increase my strength, right? Because my strength is already 20 because of my level 8 feet of improved ability score. But this will work up until then. And on top of it, Bull Strength doubles your carrier capacity. So it's kind of a nice thing to have until you get this right at the beginning of Act 3. You gain 15 temp hit points whenever you rage, which is going to be always. And you reduce all incoming damage by 2. When the wearer is struck by a melee attack, the attacker takes 3 piercing damage. So those are all of your items. It's pretty straightforward. You don't really have to worry about much. Let's now put this bad boy into action and see how this all comes together. Jumping into combat, let's put this all together like I was saying. So just to kind of reinforce this one more time, we'll be using this weapon because it has the thrown weapon attribute, meaning it will do all sorts of damage. Now, the Dwarven Thrower that we looked at earlier, it's a Warhammer, but it also has that thrown attribute. And just to kind of beat a dead horse here, you know, this weapon right here does not say thrown. So just be mindful of it. We're focusing on those weapons because that's what does the most damage. If you do not have any of the weapons we've talked about, using javelins are thrown weapons, or daggers. A lot of those are thrown weapons, just as long as it has this right at the bottom. So we've already kind of started this combat off. I've popped a potion of haste to give us an extra action. Let's go ahead now and use Frenzy. This is going to put us into our Berserker Barbarian state. And we're going to use Throw. And then we're going to click on our equipped weapon. You can throw anything else in your inventory, but this is what we're going to be doing. So just to kind of show off what we're going to do here, we'll throw that one weapon. And we did quite a bit. So with this weapon in specific, this has Zephyr connection. So you cannot be forced to drop the trident, but when thrown, the weapon creates an explosion that deals 3 to 12 thunder damage in a 20-foot blast centered on the target. So just be mindful of that. I did want to just kind of show that off, but we did to that guy the piercing damage, the acid damage, 5 damage from Tavern Brawler, and then more bludgeoning damage. So we also can do it again and kill Mr. Jepson here. And that was all right here again. 18, 2, 5, 6, and then the thunder damage. But we did have that extra action because I used that potion. Well, we're going to go ahead and throw this again. And we're going to go ahead and throw this again. It's disgusting. Hey, you know what? We still have one bonus action. Because I did Frenzy here, we used up one of our bonus actions. So let's throw again. Pick this weapon, and we will launch this one again. I mean, look at that. That one was pretty juicy. 20, 2, 5, 6, 10. So you can see how this really comes together and equals a lot of extra damage. So in total, right, that's 20 or 30, 35, 37 plus, so 44 total damage. Cripplingly fast math right there. I'm going to go ahead and end turn here, and we'll go and just kind of give you my closing thoughts just to kind of show off that you can use that strike twice in one turn, because like I said, it was supposed to have been patched, but it apparently wasn't, so I wanted to show that off really quick. But I think this is, obviously, yes, this is the most disgusting, really strong, melt your face kind of build. And it's also really goddamn fun. It's probably the best Barbarian that you can use for honor mode because of the disgusting amount of damage you can do. With the Potion of Haste, you're looking at a total... Oh, no, don't move. Oh, you're going to get hit. You're looking at a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 throws in a single turn. It's disgusting, right? So we will Enrage Throw just to kind of show you that this exists. Do that damage. Critical miss, but whatever. We still did damage. And we're going to throw again. So you can get all this damage out of this character. It is absolutely absurd. It's absurd too to think of a Barbarian as a range class, but this is really one that just goes so well together and does a disgusting amount of damage and allows you to really melt your way through any target. I'm using this in my honor mode that I've been streaming. You'll see I'm streaming Saturday and Sunday if you want to jump on in and watch. But between having Karlach as my throwing barbarian and having Lae'zel as a tavern brawler monk, it's just nothing can really last when it's their turn. So this is a very strong build. Hope you have a lot of fun with it. If you have different ways you'd approach this, say, hey, you know what? The champion actually works better here. Or go with the battle master and talk to me why you really like that one over this one. I'm always open to hearing your guys' suggestions for different ways to approach these builds. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.